Yo, 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 welcome to another episode of the Compact Coaster series where we build affordable, exciting coasters that are sure to fit anywhere in your parks. This time we are featuring the American Aero Looping Coaster, and we've also got a brand new scenario that we're working in. It's a construction zone for building coasters, and you can check out the descriptions to get a link to the scenario and also the blueprints that I found to use in the scenario. Don't forget to drop a comment and let me know what you think of this video, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you need more roller coasters in your life. And let's get to building some of these sweet features of this ride. Alright, to start things off, I made a new footprint area, and this one's just a 45-degree elbow. I will be adding some more footprints as we go along and updating the Steam Workshop file so that you'll have access to them as well. For this chain lift, I wanted it to kind of cross over the brake run section at the end of the track and sort of over the station as well. And I wanted to get straight into a mini drop into a heartline rolled half loop, or I guess a dive drop as it's sometimes called. So to go about doing this dive drop, I wanted to make sure that we were starting off with a heartline roll. So we're using the banking offset to achieve that. And I was starting to have trouble like figuring out how the curve needed to go. I wanted it to be slightly uphill and then diving into the half loop. Unfortunately, there was no pre-made pieces that we could use for that, but we can always use the pre-made pieces as a guide to build our freeform pieces around. So that's what we did here. Ended up adding in the dive loop portion, which is a half roll into the half loop, and then deleted out a little bit of the track, and then just kind of traced above it, adding in that little hill that I wanted before the dive loop. All right, once we got the general shape down, it was time to smooth it over and start giving it a test run to see how the car ran through there. It was going pretty slow at the top of that, and of course it was not exciting at all, so I decided to lower everything to get through that feature just a little bit faster. After watching a point of view ride, I decided that the banking had gotten a little bit off from the smoothing, so I went back in and manually turned the banking to where I was wanting it to be. At the bottom of this big dive loop, I was hoping to put in one of these really small hills that have seemed to be really popular lately. The new Steelers coaster has one of these. I've seen some other people in Planet Coaster doing it. But it seems to be a trending, like really small airtime hill at the bottom of a really large drop. And sure enough, as we'll see later in the episode, the excitement goes up to like 9.5 or something like that from this little airtime hill. So after that airtime hill, we were obviously running out of space, so we needed a way to loop back and go towards the end of the coaster again. And I wanted to do a kind of helix corkscrew mix. I don't know what you want to call it, but we're kind of helixing up and then heartline rolling out of it, or corkscrew rolling out at the top. It was a little bit tricky to put together. The G-forces were getting really high in some areas. It was either, if I didn't have enough banking, the lateral G's were really high, and if you add in the appropriate amount of banking, then the vertical G's became really high. So it took quite a bit of tweaking, and ultimately the first try of that was too tight, and so I needed it to be larger so that way we could tone down some of the G-forces, and that also allowed us to extend that little bunny hill thing, the airtime moment, and by doing that we were able to get a little longer airtime and more excitement. So we're starting the second attempt of this helix corkscrew thing, and I'm leaving the coaster running so that we can constantly monitor the vertical G's during this feature. So I'm really wanting to keep them in control. And I also noticed that I was building in the scenario editor, not actually playing it, so we had unlimited money. So I had a quick swap over, saved it, and continued up right where we left off, where money matters. Also, for that small bunny hill, I was coming in at 15 degrees and then using the longest piece I could, which I think is a 20-meter segment, and then pulling from 15 degrees to minus 15 degrees. And that created a very smooth bunny hill. And I think I'll be using the 15-degree mark for bunny hills in the future. It seemed to go really smoothly using 15 degrees to minus 15 degrees. The other tricky thing about using the offset banking and trying to pull off the heartline rolls is the angle at which you're going is really hard to gauge as you're in the middle of turning the coaster upside down. Now we need to find some sort of feature that can turn us around and send us back in the direction that we just came. I was thinking about doing a half loop with the rollout kind of thing, or perhaps another dive loop, but I thought that would be like 2 dive loops basically right in a row, so I didn't want to do that. So as I was thinking of what to put at the end, I came over and just worked on this helix to corkscrew kind of thing, trying to get some of the G-forces down. I can't really stress it enough how important these heat maps are, and making sure that you're switching between different heat maps and that sort of thing can really allow you to fine-tune your coaster and just take it to the next level. So I decided on doing just a kind of bank turn almost to the like sideways loop that is a pre-made feature, but not quite. I just wanted to kind of turn the coaster over and dive into a nice turn, and then going under the track and into another kind of short airtime hill. But I think that in a turn like that, you don't really catch the airtime like you do over a straight hill. At this point in the build, we've still got plenty of money left, and so I didn't really want to just close up the coaster there with, I think we had like $1,200 left in cash we can work with. So I was going to try to add in another feature or something else to make the ride a little longer. The small turn that was kind of hoping to be an airtime hill, but it didn't really catch any airtime. It was also pulling a lot of lateral G's. Would be enough to injure the rider. So I had to start thinking of something else that we could do here. I was trying to just overbank it more, so we'll push some of those lateral G-forces into the vertical category and at least make the ride safe. I started looking at adding in another feature or a loop of some sort in before we start heading towards the end of the station. The loop, although it would fit, it ends up putting us in a really bad spot to actually get back to the station. So now I feel like I'm forced to have to go out past the station or do some sort of loop back or something like that. And like I mentioned earlier, I was wanting to avoid another dive loop or half loop with a roll since we already had one of those features in the coaster. So now I'm kind of at a loss for what to do. So since I feel like I need to move past the station, I also think that I'm going to be blocking the ride entrance. So we switch the station to be an entry from the other side and shift it in. And while I'm here, I got rid of that funny little section at the beginning of the chain lift. I thought it was a good idea at first, but then I kind of quickly changed my mind and decided to just go with a normal looking chain lift. Also adding in the optional sports, no, not sports, whatever the railings are. We decided to add those at the front just to kind of connect in with the chain lift nicely. So I'm checking the excitement maps here just to see if adding the loop is really worth the excitement versus the trouble of trying to connect the coaster now at the end. And also, since I forgot to add the 100% refunds for the scenario, so now at this point I've deleted so much, I've got next to no money left, and so I really have to wrap it up. I do pull out the $2,000 loan just so we can finish up the coaster, since I realized that I did not have the 100% refund multiplier. I know I could add the loan and still be within the $8,000 budget for building this coaster. And as you just saw, I fit the loop and we went under the first bunny hill and kind of turned around. We did go outside of the bounds just a little bit, but the bounds are always just a guideline. They're not the law. So coming out like that ended up allowing us to tie into the end of the station nicely. I still feel like it's a abrupt ending. I think having a loop towards the end kind of makes it a little bit awkward because it seems like, most of the time a loop is at the beginning or middle run, and it's not necessarily like a signifier that the ride is about to end. So I do wish that I could continue the ride a little bit more with some hills and maybe another helix or some turns and that sort of thing. But to keep it compact and the footprint small and also stay within budget, we had to just go straight into the brake run. Of course, if you're putting this coaster in one of your parks, you could always just knock out that brake run and continue the ride in a fashion that would really meld well in the park surroundings. From here, I was just trying to really perfect the last little brake run and figure out where to put the block section in. I ended up adding it right after the friction brakes rather than against the station. And I was also messing with the station length, which sometimes totally forget to do, and it's just an overlook on my part. But adjusting the station length can change the amount of coasters that you can run. Not coasters, number of cars per coaster you can run. And the number of cars can have an effect on the way the train rides along the track. So that's something to consider in your builds. At this point, that last turn is really pulling some G's. It's coming in very fast. So at the bottom of the loop, I decided to add a short friction brake, and we'll just spend a little bit of time tuning in that brake so that we're not losing too much speed, but we're losing just enough to make that turn not so intense. And that is going to wrap up the build for this episode of the Compact Coaster series. I hope you enjoy the look and the layout of this coaster as much as I do. I was very pleased with the way it came out. Thank you so much for joining in with me today. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've got tons more builds coming. We've got another park project we're working on, and in general, more Planet Coaster goodness. I'm going to leave you guys with the point of view ride for this ride, like always. Don't forget to check in the description for a link to this coaster's blueprint. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks again for joining in, and let's check out the ride.